It's me, Clayton Turner, and Rick Abels. Rick, you own a travel agency, a SEO GMB Google Maps ranking agency. You own a staffing agency. You and I have been going together through the build and scale master prompt methodology. And so this is our opportunity to do some experience share and share our knowledge of what we have done, what we've learned, how much it's impacted our businesses. I have a consulting business and an agency. It's been amazing. So you've been really banging it out on the master prompt, and not only have I learned from you, but also from the other masterminds that we've joined. So this is our opportunity to share some knowledge and some experiences that we've learned over the last few weeks as we're building our cohort and helping our clients. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of start off to where's your head at in the AI master prompt game. You have some really good insights on what it's done for your businesses.
Yeah. So with the 5 businesses that I own and then the ones that I consult as well, we've been figuring out kind of the hard way, beating our heads against the wall of how do we use AI. And for a long time, I think like most people are still doing it, we've been using AI as like a glorified search engine to help us do this or to help rewrite this or to come up with a funny meme or something like that. Trial and error stepped into a situation where we wanted to try to give as much context to AI as we possibly could. And each I'm kind of AI agnostic. Like I don't really care which AI tool someone is using or which one we use, but I have found that because it's changing so much, different AI tools let you do different things. And what's working the easiest right now, and others are coming along, is Claude for adding context for a business. And again, I use Grok, I use ChatGPT, I use Gemini, I use Claude, I'm using Notebook LM. But for the principles that I'll talk about here in just a second, I have found that Claude works the best for that. And what we're doing is creating a company or a business master prompt. And inside of Claude, you can actually create a project and you can put all of the pertinent things to that business inside that project. So I have multiple different projects. I have a personal project, a couple different personal projects, and then I have a project for each individual business. And inside of that business, I add documentation about that business. And really what's happened is I've created prompts that I feed to AI when I'm starting a new project for a new business or one of my clients. We put a prompt into AI and then it starts asking me questions about my business, about me, about what we do. And eventually we start building a pretty decently sized what we call a business master prompt. And once you start building that and then adding other documentation to that. So for example, we might have AI scan our website and pull in as much information as possible. For our travel agency, it's a luxury travel agency, and we don't do a lot of ad hoc travel creation. You know, someone that wants to go to Europe and just wants to do whatever they want to do. That's not what we do. We usually help people book river cruises and tours through dedicated companies. And so I could put all of those companies that we work with, and we work with dozens, into AI. It went to their websites, pulled their information. And so it knew about our suppliers, our partners that we work with, and it started adding things to our master prompt, which gave it tons of context. And I've found that the context is what's crucial. If you can add context to the business AI first and the business master prompt, then every time I interact with AI, it knows everything about my business.
So you built out the AI master prompt for our joint venture here, Build and Scale, and shared yesterday. It is 30 pages of context. I was impressed about how well it documented everything it knew about us, our staff, my staff, your resources versus my resources, and gave it us. Now we can use that as okay, we're going to do this. What should we do based on this master prompt, right?
Yeah, and I've made that even more simple because I can show it examples of my other master prompts. And so it knows what sort of content we're looking for. And so that master prompt that I created for Build and Scale probably took me, the actual master prompt probably took me like 3 to 4 hours, but there's much more content into that took me, other hours to be able to, I don't know, I'm probably, 20 hours or so into all of the content that's into that, because that master prompt talks about our products, it talks about our pricing, it talks about our marketing. So all of those things have to be built out, or if you're building them out linearly, you can start adding pieces in, and then you can start adding that as a document into your Claude project that gets saved. So now every time I open up that project, for example, for build and scale, I can just start adding with the inside of the project without getting any context at all. And it's pulling from the project knowledge base, and it can start answering questions. In one of my other businesses, because we're working on, I've been spending so much time putting all of these things together, and then I'm just now starting to pass these things off to what I'm calling our AI integrator. Really, it's a project manager that has deep product knowledge inside of AI and that are using it. But I wanted to make sure that it's working across the board as I'm starting to choose the people in each business that are going to be doing this. Our CRM, we use some AI inside of our CRM to be able to contact leads and to have conversations with them in order to schedule meetings. And when we're talking about our market to lead and our lead to sale, I was able to ask AI, hey, this is our CRM. I want to give some background knowledge. I want to train our bots to better have knowledge on our business. And it pulled from the project knowledge, and it gave me 40 Q&As, the question and then the answer that I could put into our CRM so that it could start using, correct data. So for example, when someone asks, how much does it cost? The normal bot says, oh, well, that's what we'll discuss with you on the call. Well, who wants to get that answer, right? I would rather give a real answer to them so they can know if they're going to be qualified or not. And not giving all of the answers to them, but enough of an answer. So I was able to script that in a time using AI, and I had to go through with AI and kind of perfect those answers. And then when it gave me an answer, I said, is this the absolute best answer that you have? Is this using all the best practices for this? Oh, no, Rick, I can make that better. And so I don't know if that makes sense, but my point is I saved hours and hours and hours trying to do this thing because I already had the master prompt built for that particular business.
That's a good point. And so the more context and the more you train it, the better it gets. And you can use that information also for SEO. Like we're having scenarios on our side, and I'm going to ask you about the difference between the master prompt and automations after this, but we're taking that same data, pulling that and pre-answering the questions and putting it in the website for SEO, crawling, and Q&A, FAQs. People ask the question, search for that same question. You could take the data and then put it on your website as well after you get the information out.
And you can do it in reverse, right? So our CRM has the AI that we use inside the CRM has a function where you can have it, instead of me going through and adding all of the FAQs individually, I can just give it the URL of the website and it will scrape all the FAQs and add them automatically. So you can, but either way, you have to be able to type those in, right? But I wanted to dive deep into this to make this right so that we could have the right things and the right voice and the right branding, and which kind of leads, I don't know if you want to jump to this now, but kind of leads to a separate topic that emerged from this exercise inside of my businesses that I own and operate. Like I laugh at it because it's funny, because I literally have kind of built now PhD level, C-level executives. So because AI has read the 1,000 best business books. It has studied McKinsey. It has studied Bain. It has studied all of these different, it knows all of this content. And now it knows the context of my business, and it knows my industry very, very well. And so I use a prompt. It's called AI CMO. And so within the AI CMO, I have it programmed in my master prompt. And anytime I ask AI CMO, it will start working. And then I tell it what I need it to do. And it will start putting a whole bunch of things together. If that's building out a content calendar, and then it automatically knows it needs to build out Facebook posts, X posts, LinkedIn posts, timing. It should be giving me suggestions. We have other best practices like 131, which is, here's my problem, come up with 3 solutions, and then choose what you feel is the best solution for that problem. All of these things are in the master prompt because our businesses, we don't have a dedicated CMO for each business, and we don't have a dedicated CFO for each business. We use shared resources, but inside of each business now, I have a AI fractional CFO, an AI fractional CMO, an AI fractional CHRO. I have an AI fractional consultant, an AI fractional COO. And so these are helping me, although we have those as shared across the business portfolio inside of each business. So we're just looking at that individual business. I can now prompt and ask questions, and it can give me responses and points of view and help me design strategy and refine strategy that's in my head. And something I want to add, a lot of people would look at that and say, oh, that's amazing. Now I don't have to have those people. Well, these are augmenting, right? This is helping me instead of going to my CMO, my real CMO, and saying, hey, this is a concern that I have, or is this a question, or hey, I need some data. That might take a couple of days to have that person put that data together, give it back to me. It might not be in the format or what I was actually looking for. And so I can just dive into AI. It knows all of this stuff. It knows it's connected to our CRM. It knows our data that's inside the CRM. It knows our closing ratio. It knows all of our ratios. Instead of me asking our sales manager, like, hey, what's our closing rate on this particular product? I can ask AI and it will tell me the actual product, because humans tend to be optimistic, is the way I would put it, on how things, when we're doing things. And so now I can get that real answer real time because it's plugged into these different things. So I hope that kind of explains a little bit more
that was very
about
good.
how that master prompt does that.
Yeah, that's very good. And let me ask you this on them, speaking about optimistic and all the LLMs being a little bit overconfident and optimistic. As part of the master prompt is one of your guidelines to say, you are a skeptic and you will verify data and information before you tell me it's true.
Absolutely. When I'm working on, I would say, mission critical pieces, I have AI I have them red hat it. So I will actually say, hey, I need you to red hat all of this information. AI, as you mentioned, in fact, there's been stuff in the news lately about ChatGPT and having some situations with that. And they're telling you everything looks really fancy and great, and you're like the smartest guy in the world. And so when stuff is mission critical, then I have AI red hat it. And AI knows what red hatting is. And so I can just say, hey, you gave me all these suggestions. Can you red hat that to be subjective?
You have to explain what red hatting is.
So red hat can mean a couple of different things, but it's usually when a team is going through software looking for bugs or looking for different things that are wrong or looking for things that aren't necessarily what they should be. So it comes from the software development side of things. And this is a really simple answer. It can also involve Q&A, but it's really making sure that there's not the negative consequences that you're looking for. Because when someone's building a piece of software, again, they're optimistic. They're trying to build these things, and they might not be thinking of the negative things or negative connotations that can come from what they're building. And so red hatting is getting in there and looking at that software and making sure it's not doing things it shouldn't be doing. And then it plays devil's advocate. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to tell me if something is absolutely wrong or not, but it starts giving me a different opinion that I can look at. Something else, a couple days ago, it started spitting out a whole bunch of percentages. And I was like, this is awesome. And an answer that it was giving me. And I'm like, hey, where did you pull these percentages? And it said, oh, sorry, Rick, these are example percentages. Those aren't the real life percentages. So anytime it's sharing percentage or numbers or revenue or things like that, I'm always double checking that work. I'm asking it where it got to. But to your question, yes, we do have that built into the master prompt.
And so one thing I noticed that when I'm going around, we're talking about AI and the master prompt and implementing AI in the business, a lot of people are saying, okay, they know they want to implement AI into the business. And I think people look at implementing AI in the business as implementing automations. And this is separate than implementing automations. And that's where I end up having to explain a lot of times, like, Okay, no, it's not the same. It's different in that you're first, when you start with your master prompt, then that leads you to being able to do automations and agentic type of AI where it acts as an agent for you and does tasks for you. Now, the AI master prompt will give you data and reporting and insights, but do you want to talk a little bit about that, the AI master prompt versus agentic automations?
That's a fantastic question, Clayton. It's actually probably one of the most core questions that we should talk about, and it is the most important and happening right now. So let me give you a business scenario, and this can help maybe explain this. I like stories. So we had a client that in my business consulting agency or company, and that has been in business for quite a few years. They're doing 10 plus million in revenue, and they can't seem to break over that. They can't get over that piece. And in diving through in each, and as I do in that consulting business, or as I have done, this was a couple of years ago, going through and interviewing every department head and executives, and then also, entry level people that are actually doing the work, and finding all of these things, doing SWOT analysis and everything inside of the business to see, what they could do to make improvements. Because a lot of people think that just adding more people, or I need more money so I can add more people or more marketing, they think that's going to solve the problem. And usually it doesn't. A lot of times in my experience, it actually makes the problems worse. The problem is actually the fulfillment side of things. And this is really important. This is kind of a long story getting to that point. But anyways, working with this client, going through identifying what needed to happen, they had a whole bunch of fulfillment issues. It wasn't top of funnel issues. In fact, the fulfillment issues were limiting them to be able to take on new clients. So we help them systematize the operations side of things, the fulfillment side of things, and putting SOPs in place and so on and so forth that could help them fix the back end of the business, the internal facing portion of the business, which then allowed them to go and focus externally. And by the way, we grew that company from just under 10 million, and then they did 22 million the next year. And they finally broke a plateau that had taken them almost a couple decades to actually break through. And so, to your point, there's a difference between having a master prompt, and which is the data that I collected from that business, and then automating everything, right? And so what a master prompt does is it puts a PhD level consultant inside of your business. And with that client that I'm referencing, and we've done this with many clients since, and then my own individual companies, what we're doing is taking the information that's in the business owner's head and we're putting it on paper so that the business owner, who usually is the bottleneck, doesn't have to be the bottleneck anymore. Everyone doesn't have to go to the business owner when making a decision or when spending money or when using new software or doing whatever. And therefore, the business owner is just losing all of this ability to guide the company and to figure out what needs to be done because they're just putting out fires all day long. And
Yeah.
so what a master prompt does is really allows the business owner to take everything out of their head, and not just the business owner. If you're a bigger business, that business that I was referencing before had 60 plus employees. And as we were able to take that information out of the business owner, because everything went through the business owner, every single decision went through the business owner. As we were able to take things in context out of his head and put that into documentation, and then we could create best practices and we could create SOPs. Well, that engagement was like 6 months for us to be able to do that from when we first started, and we were making incremental changes, but to actually finish it, it took us like 6 months. I can now do that with AI in a couple of days, in under a week.
Yeah.
And so that allows us to literally take the brain of the business owner, put that into a master prompt, and knowing everything about the business and things that the business owner forgets. So many times when going through and building these master prompts for these various businesses, the business owner forgets about that and forgets about this and forgets about this process or forgets about that this rule holds true except in this situation. And he muscle memory, or she muscle memory, remembers that situation, but couldn't tell it to you just off of their head. Well, once we figure that out, and that's why a master prompt is not a fixed thing, it's a living document. You're constantly adding to it. And so you can go back into AI and say, hey, just something I remembered. And by the way, I rarely type into AI anymore. I use software or speak because I can speak way faster than I can type. I speak into AI and say, hey, I need to edit this one piece. There's a situation when this happens and this happens and this happens, that here's an exception. And then it can go back through and update every single thing in the master prompt to deal with that exception. You're gonna go through things in a master prompt, and in your first round of your master prompt might have conflicting information, but it can also have duplicate information. So there's a process of going through your master prompt and whittling that down and making sure that there's no conflicting information, and making sure that you're not saying one thing here and saying it again here, because you want to make it really easy for AI. Now, again, the master prompt is getting the information, the business context out of the business owner, the department heads, the people that are actually doing the business, getting the information out of their head into a document that can be used inside of the business, really by anybody inside the business, depending on what information is. And you can have multiple types of master prompts. So I have a master prompt for my business, and then I also have reduced master prompts that maybe doesn't share compensation, and maybe it doesn't get into all of the marketing spend and all of that sort of thing that different people in the business can be able to use, but they're not accessing everything in the business.
That's a good point. Because if you're in a Claude Teams environment and you want your operation to run, let's say, without you, and you're not there, and you put the master prompt in, you can empower your team to be like, okay, what would Rick do in this situation? How should we handle this? You know, you're on a boat in the middle of the ocean, you can't reply. Having a master prompt for your team allows them to quickly get the answers they want, and have the context to what you would do and say and act.
Yep.
And I want to iterate again, the master prompt for just this build and scale project, which is an entity/project, is 35 pages. So it knows everything about what we're doing, what the plans are, what our resources are. And that's just a good example of like what a good master prompt looks like. And people say, okay, well, I want some workflows. I want agentic stuff. Well, that's kind of like what we've been doing on the Leadly side, is that like helping them with automations, helping them with lead generation, helping them move customers through the pipeline and sequences. Well, that's just automations. That's just agentic. That's not even a master prompt contextual about like how the business, what I call co-CMO, co-CEO, co-CXO stuff, where the master prompt actually gives you insight about your business and strategy, right? It's not the agentic workflow stuff.
Exactly. A master prompt is taking everything out of the business owner's head, or the decision makers, or the people that are actually doing things in the business. It's what the business does. How does it offer that to the market? How does it go about in fulfilling that, and adding all of the information about the business? It can include marketing spend. It can include HR information, how you deal with certain HR situations, an FAQ of HR situations. It can deal with financial situations, or this is how we look at this, or this is our asset portfolio might look like. It can look at a whole bunch of different things. It can look at a whole bunch of different things inside of each business or from each decision maker. So a master prompt takes information out of the people's heads that are actually doing things, and usually out of the business owner's head, and puts it in a document. Therefore, other people in the business don't have to come to the business owner all of the time to get the answers. They can go to a master prompt. They can use AI, and that information that is the business and is in the business owner's head, or the people doing the things in the business, these various people throughout the company can then talk to the master prompt, and the master prompt can then respond as if it was the business owner. Versus setting things up from an automation standpoint, which is totally different, right? That information you're going to feed, the master prompt information is what you need to be able to feed into an agentic situation, or when you're trying to automate things. And automation doesn't necessarily mean AI, but for example, you might set up a workflow to, hey, email this person on day one. This is what you tell them. Wait 48 hours, day two. That's not AI. You're just building out that automation. But you can have AI then help you write what those static messages are as it better understands your business and your context. That's what we call level 1. And then level 2 is you can have a system and a process in place to be able to help you do that. Level 3 is that it's semi-automated. So you can actually use, for example, AI conversation tools where you're taking things from your master prompt, putting that into the AI conversation tool. And for example, if people are coming into your chat, or if you're cold emailing or cold messaging, you can have a messenger bot being able to, an AI messenger bot responding to that with the information you took from your master prompt, and you're putting that into that messenger bot. So it's responding intelligently about your business. That's kind of the differences, the nuances between the two.
Yeah, good clarifying that. Make.com, N8N, those will carry out certain tasks and functions for you in your business. And yes, it is getting better by the day. You can have it automate the process of getting a new LinkedIn contact, taking that, researching that person's background, email, whatever, pulling it into your CRM, being able to interact with that person based on some automation, agentic automations that took place in the background. But having the master prompt for each of your businesses, each of your projects, is key to starting before you even start the SOP process, the onboarding, the marketing process. It's really been huge in helping people get ready for launching anything new or changing or expanding or scaling and master prompt in context first before you launch anything new. And that's what I love about this. I told people, you said it 30 hours, I think you said. I've been telling people it's about 12 to 20 hours, depending on the size of your company, your project. Creating the master prompt is an iterative process to get all the context and data that it needs in order to know everything about you and your business, product, services, competitors. It takes about 20, and you said 30, I think, right? So
that 20, 30 hours, that's multiple iterations of the document that we offer people a simple, basic master prompt that they can start working with. That takes you about 30 minutes to 45 minutes to be able to fill it out, and you have a master prompt. And then you keep adding things to it and adding things to it. I mean, after an end of a year, we could count it to where it's hundreds of hours we've spent on our master prompt because it's all of the various iterations. I think, for example, our build and scale one, the version that we finally went with is, I think it's version like 26 or something like that.
oh
So that's after many, many times of iterating, changing things. Hey, I don't like the way that this flows. Hey, we need to add this piece to it, things like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you
Sorry,
said
it's 32. Version 32 is our most recent version.
That's a good point, because as we're doing this and we're launching these cohorts to help founders build this out, it's the reason that it's a month-long cohorts, because it takes that long to build it, get the feedback, get some input, because it's not always just cut and dry. You do have to navigate some of the complexities of the AI and the LLMs, and that's one thing that we got good at, and now we're helping other people do it. And on the back end side, the automations and the workflow stuff comes after, in my mind. You get the master prompt created for each project, each company, and that way you get your best data, best knowledge, and co-CXO, right?
Exactly. You nailed it. So when we start talking about the scale method, which is our trademark method, it starts with systems. So you have to build, and part of the system is the master prompt. So building out that master prompt, think about that as the heart, the beating heart of the business. And then you're going to keep adding to that, right? Or maybe even a better way of doing it is the brain of the business. And our program helps you determine which are the most important SOPs, where things are lacking, how do you build that out? And then that SOP becomes part of the master prompt. So that master prompt keeps building and building, and who reports to who, and under what situations does this situation happen, and what does our review situation look like? How do we handle customer complaints, or how are just all kinds of things for the entire customer journey life cycle? How are each of those P's happening inside of each of those 6 stages of the customer life cycle? And then how are we actually implementing that? What is the strategy to be able to do that? How do we make small pivots to do things? How do we start looking for incremental improvements? A lot of business owners are looking to, go from a 20% open rate to an 80% open rate. Well, in my experience of doing that, sending millions and millions of cold emails over the years, that's unrealistic. It's realistic at the very beginning, but then after, you're really looking for like 1% incremental improvements, right? But the master prompt, if you have that first, that brain, then you can start adding these other pieces that are going to help you do that, because AI then knows AI is already a really good consultant. And now it knows every single thing about your business. It knows, for example, AI in my businesses, it knows all of our emails, what we send, all of our email templates. It knows all of our FAQs. It knows all of our responses. It knows what our best calls sound like, look for. We have scorecards for each of those calls. It knows all of those things so that when we take, maybe we're training a brand new rep, AI can actually help train a brand new sales rep because it knows what the best practices are, those KPIs are that we have established and that we have identified. And it can actually train. I don't know if it's better than a real person yet, probably not, but it can get quite a ways of helping a brand new sales rep get up to speed, because you can have a master prompt and a brand new sales rep can say, hey, teach me about your business, and then we can create a quiz where, hey, ask me 5 questions about the business and see if I understand that. But you can create these sorts of things because AI knows everything about your business inside of that master prompt. I can't overstress how important having that master prompt is. And then you're adding things to it. So I might not, for example, end up with 1,000-page master prompt, but I might have addendums to my master prompt in separate documents. For example, our HR, hierarchy, who reports to who. I don't have that inside of my master prompt because that changes and can change regularly. So we have that as a separate document that the master prompt references that document, and we can edit just that document without having to go back through and edit the entire master prompt. Yeah. Our master prompt isn't getting bigger every single day. We're adding different pieces to our Claude project base. The project base does get bigger, but that master prompt, I found after about a month or so, that master prompt kind of stays relatively the same. We do start changing a couple of different pieces inside of it, but it's not getting exponentially bigger. We are adding other ancillary documents that are addendum to the master prompt. They're not part of the original 40-page document or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can silo out and keep artifacts separate from how your master prompt is co-CEO. And some people call it a second brain. Some people call it DNA, founder's DNA. We're calling it AI operating system. That is where everything starts, and you can build off of that. We've covered a lot of territory here. I think we got a lot of good talking points that'll help people get started. Of course, they can go to buildandscale.com and get the startup of the master prompt. I wanted to share. Let's talk about a couple of tech items that we use to make it easier. You talk about voice to text. I use WhisperFlow because you can talk like a human. You do too. You can be like, here's what I'm thinking. Oh, here's what I meant to say. And WhisperFlow will take that and make it a real sentence. Whereas if you just hit record on your Apple, it's going to take in everything. So WhisperFlow is a good, really cheap tool to get that going. And another thing I've discovered in the last couple of months is this phone app called M1. And what M1 does is it records your calls. And I'm doing, like, for example, I'm doing one of my exit deals right now and helping a founder exit. And M1 takes the call, listens to it, transcribes it. I know that it's being recorded. And if I don't have any data, I'll ask the person okay, tell me what your sales are right now. What are your net? All right. And what's your terms? What are you looking for? And then M1 takes that transcription, sends it over to email, and then I can put it into Claude and then say, okay, what are my next steps here? It'll tell me before I even get back to my desk what the next steps are, what I committed to doing on that call. So M1 is a good tool too. You have any others you want to highlight as well?
I'm using those. Obviously, whenever we have a Zoom call or something, using Fathom or Fireflies or whatever that is, that always works really well. So similar to your M1 when you're making a phone call. So for example, I got off of a sales call yesterday. We're training a new sales manager, and I wanted to make sure that they kind of understood some nuances. And so there was a sales call that I could get on and be able to share that with. And so I got on the call and we had the call. It was 15, 20 minutes and we closed them. They're a client now. And then I had to, like every salesperson does in the world, we needed to send a follow-up email about what we went over and what's happened and the things that I promised in the email. Well, nowadays, I don't write any of that down. I use Fathom or other, whatever meeting recording things. And as soon as it ends, it gives me the transcript. I put that transcript this is the manual process. We also have built out automated processes to do this. But in this business, I'm not in that normal sales flow. So this was an ad hoc situation. And so I took the transcript, put it into AI. Hey, I need to send a follow-up. This is all I typed into AI. I need to send a follow-up email to this person about next steps.
I love it.
Copied the transcript, pasted the transcript in. It knew everything from what I promised the guy in the call, everything in the call, put that all together and made it way nicer than I would have ever done. And, using images and using the green little check boxes and all this stuff to make it really easy, everything put together. And then actually I saw how good that was. And then I went to some after that we finished and we sent that email because I wanted to know what our normal process looked like for that. And then I was comparing our template that's automated that we used, and it wasn't as good as what the new stuff was. And so we swapped it out. We took that response and put that into this template that we can use and updated the template because it was better than what the template was. So that's also an example of how software can help augment a process and then also improve an SOP and improve a deliverable because we used automation along with the master prompt and all of the context that AI has about my business, and then putting that meeting information in there. And now we actually have a list of SOPs under each stage of the customer journey. And now that stage of the customer journey for, when we finish a call and someone says yes and they're ready, we just send them a follow-up email. These are the next steps and what's going to happen. That email that I created yesterday has now replaced part of the old SOP of what that was. So the tools are helping us do that. But those are some of the big ones. Those are some of the big ones that I use. There's also great tools for creating headshots. Let's see, what's the one that I use?
Headshot Pro.
I use one called Gio, G-I-O. I think it's $15 or $19 or $30. I can't remember, but it was under $40 for, I think, lifetime or for a year or something. You can add images and you can choose a whole bunch of different situations that you can add headshots that make you look professional. Instead of taking 1,000 shots and putting on a different jacket and putting on a sweater, now you can just take the one shot and then you can use this AI tool to change out your outfit 1,000 different ways, add different lighting. It's still you. It's still, it can be a new background or your background, but it's just a way to change out some of those things would just make it super duper simple.
I think this is a good start to help people get started and think about, contextualize what the AI master prompt does for them, how important it is to start with the AI master prompt, or we call it AIOS, and build that out. And then once you do that, you can plug everything else into it. We're going to do monthly cohorts with founders and executives, help them and it's all about freeing up your time and resources and be able to scale. It's not too late to start. People are starting now. Now's the time to go and be ahead of the game. And I'm glad to be on this journey with you. I mastered Descript for the video editing side. I've combined it with Zoom. Zoom is recording this right now. As soon as we finish, it's going to go over to Descript. Descript's going to take all the ands and ums and cut those out and clean it up. And then I'll have to do very minimal editing and I'm going to shoot it over to YouTube. So this will be live tonight, probably. And
something else that we didn't talk about that we could fit it in wherever in the video, but I've never met a business owner that wishes they could spend more time in their business, not on their business, but in their business, that wishes they were more important inside the business. Right. So what installing a AI operating system with at the heart of that is a master prompt. What that allows founders and business owners to do is to kind of clone themselves, to take the information out of their head and out of the people in their head and put that into systems, you can then automate. I cannot automate a business owner that has everything in their head. I can't do that. But if I can take everything out of that business owner's head, or at least the majority of that information, and put that into a system, a master prompt, or in writing, I can then begin to automate that. It will start as maybe it's semi-automating it. Maybe I can't automate every single step in that process, but maybe I can automate 3 or 4, which reduces time. And then eventually I can get to the point where maybe the entire process is automated. By the way, AI can also help you figure out how to automate that, what to automate, what's not very easy to automate. And you can ask it a series of questions to do that. So this is what we're trying to help do. We're trying to help business owners clone what's in their head so that they don't have to be the person in the business and at the business 60 hours a week. If they're on vacation, I was just on vacation with my family and 3 other families for a week on our houseboat. And one of the business owners, he was taking calls all day long. We didn't used to have cell phone coverage on the houseboat where we go on the houseboat. This year, they must have improved things, and he could get phone calls, and he was getting pinged all day long. And I finally pulled him aside. Again, he's one of my neighbors, a really good friend. And buddy, this is what you need to do so that they can reference something. This is a home services company, and he has all of these workers that are out in the fields at various homes and doing different things. They could easily have Claude on their phone with the master prompt in there and be able to say, hey, how do I do this? Or what should I do in this situation? Instead of having to contact my buddy that's doing it. Yeah, exactly.
They would be like talking to him. If he had that master prompt, 30-page master prompt, 17 to 30 hours, wherever it takes to create it, if he had all in a master prompt, they could say, what would boss man do, right?
Exactly. And does that answer all of their questions? No, but I mean, you're on a houseboat, so there's not a lot.
They could send him a text and be like, hey, based on this current customer situation, here's how I'm going to react. Do you agree or disagree? They send him the text. He goes, yeah, go forward. If he wants to still be involved, he could at least do it that way.
Yeah. So the prompt says this is what I think. And then it's a yes or no question instead of him having to explain. And he has a couple of different crews. So he had a couple of different guys in the same day. The houseboat isn't very big, so I could hear the conversations. He had a couple of different guys the same day and asking the same basic question, where to find things.
We see it all the time. And these guys are making multi-millions, but they're locked in the business. Listen, we were all the same way at some point.
That's just helping them being able to step away for a couple of, days or weeks and get a break. But stage 2 then is then being able to exit the business and however you want to define the word exit. Because if I'm looking into purchase a business and everything's in the business owner's head, that's not very sexy to me, because I don't know if this guy's going to get hit by, or this lady's going to hit by a bus. I don't know if he's, going to want to stick around. I don't know if the information he's giving me is correct because he's already had his payday, but you just never know. But if I have someone that's a CEO that's working on strategy, that's executing on strategy, but that everything is documented in systems, and it's an open situation where people are making decisions in each department and they're doing the different things that they need to do. It's decentralized decision-making. That's much more interesting. And I'm willing to pay a higher value for that company because it's decentralized. And now instead of worrying about just one person getting replaced, that information is spread out across, maybe it's 5, 10, 15 people, which then allows that business owner to sell his business or her business, or allow that business owner to step back and maybe be a board member instead, or maybe hire a CEO that could take that business to the next level, which I've actually done that quite a few times, stepping into businesses, becoming the CEO, making changes and still working with the business owner, but becoming the CEO, turning things around, fixing things, grew it to where the business owner had never been able to do, and either continuing that process or then finding someone to step in, manage that and grow it slowly. If you don't have the system in place, if you don't have that AIOS at the heart of what you're trying to do, those options of exit are really slim to none. But the more that you can automate that, put systems in place and automate those systems, then you have a lot of options as a business owner of what you can do, not the least of which is reducing the time that you are needed in the business. You could go back to maybe just working a normal 40-hour work week. So
it makes the business so much more valuable. And I'm brokering some deals, and buyers are looking for systematized processes in business, not just revenue. Revenue is good, but they're going to pay a lot less multiple if you don't have systematization of some sort going on there. And your AI OS master prompt really sets the framework for that. All the automations in the SOPs come after that. But once you have the founder's brain and operating system built out, and you build out all the different SOPs and automations behind that, that ups your multiple tremendously right there, because you pass the hit by the bus rule. You can actually disappear for a few days. Buyers love that. And they'll pay a greater multiple if they can step into a business without the founder having to be there to answer every dumb question every day. So that's a good point. And I think that's where we got to leave it.
Great. This was great, Clayton. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for getting all this out. And I think it's great, valuable info. And I'm looking forward to being in this journey with you. We're going to help a lot. We're already helping a lot of founders get their AI OS co-CEO, co-CXO in place. And yeah, let's kill it. We're going to do several of these. We could have kept going for 4 hours. I appreciate you giving me all the brain dump you did. That was excellent.
Perfect.
Cool,
Thanks
man.
so much.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.